Okay, today we're going to talk about persuasion. And to get to persuasion, we need to talk about logos, ethos, and pathos. We'll do a little background look at persuasion, how we got to where we talk about logos, ethos, and pathos. First, though, we're going to define persuasion as the process of convincing people to think or act in a certain way. Now, we need to unpack that definition a little bit. So persuasion is a process. That means there's going to be several steps that take place to get to that process. We're trying to convince people. So what we want to do is change somebody's mind or change their action. And we want them to act or think in a certain way. Now, sometimes persuasion is intentional, and sometimes it's unintentional. Intentional persuasion is when I set out to want to change your mind or change your action. I try to persuade you. Sometimes the persuasion, though, is unintentional. Unintentional persuasion, I happen to be persuaded by something you said, even though you necessarily didn't mean to persuade me. For our case today, we're going to be talking about intentional persuasion, where we set out to change somebody's mind or change their action, or convince them to think or act in a certain way. So in talking about persuasion, we'll talk about Aristotle. Aristotle is the king or the author of the rhetoric, and he gave us the terms ethos, logos, and pathos. We can liken these terms, logos, ethos, and pathos, back to the communication model. Logos is going to be concerned with the actual message itself, and we're going to call that reasoning in just a little bit, or logic. Ethos, we're going to liken back to the speaker, to the credibility or the competency or the trustworthiness that we give to the person presenting the message, or in our model, the sender or the transmitter of a message. And pathos, we're going to put the burden of pathos back on the listener. The listener, pathos, is our emotional response or feeling. So if I can get my listener to feel, I might be able to persuade them. Logos comes to us from the Greek word speech or word, or as we're going to call it, reason. And logos is the idea of logical proof. If I'm going to persuade someone and I want to use logos, logos is going to be good logical reasoning. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine recently received a promotion where he works. And he was talking about his raise in pay and what he was going to do with his money. And he was excited that he was finally able to put money aside and create a little bit of a savings. Now, he also, I knew from previous conversation, had some debt, some credit card debt and some, his car payment and things like that. So in our conversations, I was trying to suggest to him that maybe he wanted to pay off that debt before he started saving his money. He didn't like that. He wanted the idea, he liked the idea, and he was committed to the idea of putting money in the bank to have money for a rainy day. But once we sat down with paper and pencil and showed the interest rate that he was going to be paying on his credit card debt versus the lower interest that he was going to be making on saving money, and I explained and was able to show him through good, logical, sound reasoning that it's actually going to cost him money to save money, he pretty much agreed that it'd probably be better to pay off his debt before he started putting money in the bank. Ethos comes from the Greek character, or we're going to also refer to it as competent, or trustworthy, or likable. Ethos is the credibility, or the trustworthiness, or the likability that we give to the speaker. If the speaker has what we determine to be good ethos, good credibility, they have an ability then to persuade us. I'll give you an example. A good friend of mine is a very good cook. Absolutely wonderful. In fact, she runs a food blog. So if I'm trying a new recipe and I have some questions about what I want to include in that recipe, I'll give her a call. I give her a call because her recipes in the past have always proven to be good. She knows what she's talking about, and she proves herself to be a competent, likable, and trustworthy cook. Pathos. Pathos comes from the Greek experience, or suffer. We continue that definition to include an emotional appeal. Pathos is the idea that if I can get someone to feel, if I can tap into your feeling to make you feel happy, to make you feel angry, to make you feel upset, if I can tap into your feeling as the listener, then I can probably persuade you. I have a 6-year-old niece, and she has red hair, long curly red hair, and big blue eyes. My niece, unintentionally, or maybe intentionally, is able to persuade me to do whatever she wants, simply by looking up at me with those big blue eyes and sticking out that lip and pouting, and that hurts me. I will do whatever she wants. You want another trip to the concession stand? Fine. You want ice cream for dinner? Fine by me. It's all in her pathos, her ability to tap into my feelings. So in interpersonal communication, we use words to persuade. Now, to review, our definition of persuasion is the process of convincing people to think or act in a certain way. And we're going to look at logos, ethos, and pathos in our attempt to use words to convince people or to persuade people. Logos, you recall, is reasoning. If I want to persuade someone through logos, I need to select reasons that give the best support for my proposal. I need to find those pieces of information, facts or evidence or examples, that support what it is that I'm saying. I need to select reasons that I can support with specific information. We can all talk in abstract, and we can make up statistics, and we can make up fictitious examples. But if I can find specific information, if I can find those pieces of data to support what I'm claiming in my reasoning, I might have a better chance of persuading. And we need to select reasons that will have an impact on the people that we are trying to persuade. If I want to persuade you with logos, I need to demonstrate to you how what I am attempting to explain is going to affect you. You might not be so concerned with what's going to impact other people in other places, but you will be concerned with what's going to have an impact on you. Ethos, you'll recall, is that competence or trustworthiness or likability. If I want to persuade someone through ethos, so I need to demonstrate that I know what I'm talking about, I'm a likable person, I'm trustworthy, I'm competent. I need to demonstrate my knowledge or my expertise. Ethos is what our doctor uses because they have those letters behind their name, MD. And when they tell us that we need to take 2 of these every 6 hours for 10 days, we do that because they've demonstrated their ethos, their credibility. If I'm going to use ethos to persuade, I need to demonstrate that I care about the effects of others. Ethos, as a speaker, I want to demonstrate my likability or my trustworthiness. And in that trustworthiness, I need to show that I care about what's going to happen to other people, which leads us directly to behaving ethically. An ethical speaker will be concerned with what is right, doing what is right and proving that he or she understands what is right. To save my ethos, to save my credibility, I'll try to behave ethically and prove my ethical standards as often as I can. Pathos is emotional response again. So through pathos, I'm going to try and get my audience to feel. I want to identify those feelings about the situation. If I can identify how I am feeling about a particular situation or circumstance, then it might be possible for you to relate to those feelings as well. I need to select the information that will stimulate those emotions. What pieces of evidence, what pieces of information can I find that are going to help trigger those particular emotions? If I want you to feel nostalgic, maybe I can show you old photos, for example, and describe my own feelings to the other person. How something makes me feel is going to have an effect on how other people feel. By using those I statements that we talk about, I feel, and go on to explain those feelings, it's possible then for others, my listener, to feel the same, or to understand at least where my feelings came from. So let's review then. We use words to persuade. We use our language to persuade others in our interpersonal interactions. We define persuasion as the process of convincing people to think or act in a certain way. And we looked at the terms logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos, remember, is logic or reasoning. Ethos is our competency or trustworthiness or likability of the speaker. And finally, we talked about pathos. Pathos is feeling or generating an emotional response in the person with whom we are interacting.